The rain-slicked alley behind the dive bar in Capitol Hill pulsed with the bass from inside, but Finn Harlan stood frozen, his breath catching as Dean Whitaker's hand, strong, calloused from years of hauling lumber in the Oregon backwoods, gripped his wrist like a lifeline he hadn't asked for. "You're not my type, Harlan," Dean murmured, voice low and gravelly, the kind that could unravel a man in the dead of night. "But damn if you don't make me wish you were." Finn's heart slammed against his ribs, the lie he'd spun to his friends, that this was all a game to prove he could walk away unscathed, shattering like the bottle that had just exploded against the brick wall beside them, shards glinting under the sodium streetlight like accusations he couldn't dodge. Finn had always been the guy who planned every move like it was a chess game, 3 steps ahead to avoid the checkmate of heartbreak. Growing up in the shadow of Seattle's perpetual drizzle, in a cramped apartment overlooking Lake Union where his single mom worked double shifts at the Boeing plant, he'd learned early that love was a luxury you couldn't afford if you wanted to keep your edges sharp. At 28, with a freelance graphic design gig that paid just enough to cover his rent in a converted warehouse loft in Fremont, Finn Harlan was the epitome of controlled chaos. Tattoos snaking up his forearms in intricate patterns of ravens and evergreen branches, a wardrobe of faded band tees and slim-fit jeans that hugged his lean runner's build, and a smile that disarmed but never fully revealed the storm brewing behind his hazel eyes. It started 3 weeks ago at the Rusty Anchor, a dimly lit hole in the wall in Capitol Hill where the craft beers flowed like confessions and the jukebox spun indie folk anthems that made strangers spill their souls. Finn had gone there with his ragtag crew, his best friend Mia, a fiery barista with a pixie cut and a penchant for calling out bullshit, and Jax, the quiet tattoo artist who'd inked half of Finn's regrets into his skin. They were nursing IPAs and trading stories about the latest grinder disasters when Dean Whitaker walked in, turning the humid air thick with possibility. Dean was the kind of man who commanded a room without trying. 32, broad-shouldered from a decade swinging a hammer on construction sites up in Bellingham. His skin a warm caramel glow from his mixed Mexican-American roots, cropped black hair dusted with premature silver at the temples, and eyes like polished obsidian that seemed to see straight through the facade you built. He wore a simple Henley shirt stretched across his chest, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle, and faded Levi's that sat low on his hips. Word around the bar was Dean had a type, tall, blonde twinks with trust funds and easy laughs, the kind who summered in the San Juans and talked about finding themselves over oat milk lattes. Finn, with his average height, brooding intensity, and a backstory laced with blue-collar grit, was the polar opposite. That's what made the bet irresistible. $10 says you can't even get his number? Mia had teased, her elbow nudging Finn's ribs as she eyed Dean across the bar, where he leaned against the counter, laughing with the bartender about some Mariners game gone wrong. Jax had chuckled, sketching idly on a napkin. Make it 20. Finn's got that wounded puppy vibe, but Dean's like him, eat that up and spit it out. Finn had rolled his eyes, the challenge igniting something reckless in his chest. Watch me. It was supposed to be simple. Flirt, exchange numbers, ghost after one awkward coffee date. Proof to himself, and to the ghosts of exes who'd called him too intense, too much, not enough, that he could dip a toe in without drowning. He sauntered over, ordered a round of whiskeys neat, and slid onto the stool next to Dean with a line about the rain outside mirroring the ache in Springsteen's latest cover on the jukebox. Dean's gaze had flicked to him, appraising, amused, and by the end of the night, Finn had his number burning a hole in his pocket. Their first date was at Pike Place Market on a Saturday that miraculously dawned clear, the kind of blue-skied rarity that made Ceadalites forget the 9 months of gray. Finn arrived early, nerves jangling like the ferry bells across the Sound, and watched Dean approach from the direction of the waterfront. Purposeful stride, a paper bag of fresh sourdough from Le Panier swinging in one hand, the other tucked into his pocket. Brought breakfast? Dean said, his smile crooked, revealing a dimple that hit Finn like a sucker punch. They wandered the stalls, sampling smoked salmon and Marionberry jam, Dean's laughter booming as he haggled with a fishmonger over a whole salmon. For the crew's barbecue up in Anacortes next weekend. And Finn found himself opening up in ways he hadn't planned, Stories about his mom's endless optimism despite the cancer scare 2 years back. The way she taught him to fish off the docks at Golden Gardens. By the time they collapsed onto a bench overlooking Elliott Bay, the sun warming their shoulders, Dean's arm had draped casually over the back of the seat, his fingers brushing Finn's nape in a touch that sent sparks skittering down his spine. "You're full of surprises, Harlan," Dean murmured, his breath warm against Finn's ear. "Thought you'd be all edges and sarcasm, but there's this softness, like the fog rolling in off the water, hides the depth till you're right up close." Finn's pulse thrummed, the lie of the bet tasting bitter on his tongue, but he leaned in anyway, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of salt and possibility, slow and exploratory, Dean's hand cupping his jaw with a gentleness that belied his rough exterior. That night, back in Finn's loft, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows like distant stars, they tumbled into bed with the urgency of men who'd waited too long for something real. Dean's body was a map of contrasts, hard planes of muscle from labor, soft curves at his hips, the faint scars from a childhood accident with a chainsaw on his father's logging crew up near Mount Baker. Finn traced them with his fingertips, memorizing the terrain, while Dean whispered praises in a voice husky from desire. "God, the way you move, like you're afraid I'll break if you hold on too tight." They moved together in the dim glow of a single lamp, bodies sinking like waves crashing against the shore, Finn's gasps mingling with Dean's low groans until exhaustion claimed them, tangled in sheets that smelled of cedar and rain. But dawn brought the first crack in the illusion. Finn woke to Dean already up, brewing coffee in the tiny kitchenette, his back to the room as he stared out at the waking city. "Got a long day ahead?" Dean said, turning with 2 mugs in hand. His expression shuddered in a way that made Finn's stomach twist. "Cruise starting a Reno on a Victorian in Queen and tight deadline before the holidays." Finn nodded, forcing a grin as he accepted the mug, but the warmth didn't reach the chill settling in his chest. This was the plan, right? Keep it light, keep walking. Yet as Dean dressed, pulling on his work boots with practiced efficiency, Finn caught a glimpse of something on the nightstand. A worn leather wallet spilling a photo. Dean, younger, arms slung around a beaming woman in a sundress, their hands intertwined over a just-married sign etched in driftwood. Jealousy flared hot and irrational, but Finn shoved it down, chalking it up to paranoia. "Hey!" he called as Dean paused at the door. "Same time next week?" Dean's smile returned, softer this time, and he crossed the room in 2 strides, pressing a kiss to Finn's forehead that lingered like a promise. "Wouldn't miss it, Harlan. You're growing on me." The door clicked shut, and Finn sank back against the pillows, the scent of Dean's cologne, earthy pine and faint motor oil, clinging to the air. Mia's text buzzed in. "How'd the experiment go?"
"Spill."
Finn typed back, "Mission accomplished. Barely survived." But as he deleted the unsent confession, "What if I don't want to stop?" he wondered if the game had already slipped from his grasp. Weeks blurred into a rhythm that felt dangerously like habit. Dinners at Dean's place in Ballard, a cozy craftsman bungalow he'd bought with his cruise savings. Walls lined with black and white photos of coastal lighthouses and shelves groaning under dog-eared paperbacks by Hemingway and Patchett. They'd cook together, Dean chopping onions with a knife skill that bordered on artistry, Finn stirring sauces while stealing glances at the way Dean's throat bobbed when he tasted and approved. Conversations stretched late into the night, Dean sharing fragments of his past. The divorce 5 years back from Elena, a high school sweetheart who'd wanted kids and city lights while he craved the salt air and solitude of the San Juans. She said I was too rooted, like one of those old madronas clinging to the cliffside. Dean admitted one evening, his fingers tracing idle patterns on Finn's thigh as they sprawled on the living room rug, a bottle of Pinot Noir half empty between them. Guess she was right. But you get the pull of the tide, don't you? That ache for home even when you're running from it. Finn did more than he let on. His own ghosts hovered at the edges. The father who'd bailed when he was 10, leaving behind a Polaroid of them at Safeco Field, mitts on and grins wide. The string of hookups in college that left him hollow, convinced he was wired wrong for anything deeper. With Dean, though, the walls crumbled brick by brick. They'd hike Discovery Park at dawn, boots crunching through dew-kissed ferns, Dean's hand enveloping Finn's as they crested the bluff overlooking the sound, seals barking faintly from the rocks below. "Look at that," Dean would say, pulling Finn close against the wind. "World's too big to stay small forever." And Finn would believe him, right up until the doubts crept in like the evening fog. One crisp October afternoon, as leaves turned the streets of Fremont into a blaze of amber and crimson, Finn spotted it. A jewelry box tucked in Dean's toolbox, half buried under wrenches and sandpaper. Heart pounding, he flipped it open. A simple platinum band, unadorned, sized for a man's finger. Panic surged, hot and choking. Was this for him? Or some ex's ghost Dean couldn't shake? He snapped it shut, shoving the box back. But the seed of unease took root, twisting through the fragile bloom of what they'd built. That night, over takeout pho from a hole in the wall on Aurora Avenue, Finn probed gently. "Ever think about settling down again? After Elena?" Dean paused, chopsticks midway to his mouth, his dark eyes clouding like the sky before a squall. "Thought about it plenty. But life's not a straight line, Harlan. Sometimes you build what you can with what's in front of you." He reached across the table, thumb brushing Finn's knuckles. But the touch felt heavier now, laced with unspoken weight. Finn forced a laugh, changing the subject to the upcoming Huskies game. But sleep evaded him later. Dean snores a steady rhythm beside him while Finn stared at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, wondering if he was just the placeholder in someone else's story. The turning point came mid-November, with Thanksgiving looming like a family obligation neither relished. Dean invited Finn to his crew's potluck in a rented hall out in West Seattle, a sprawling affair with picnic tables groaning under turkey and tamales, laughter echoing off rafters strung with fairy lights. Finn arrived nervous, clutching a tray of his mom's pecan pie recipe, but Dean's arm around his waist grounded him instantly. "Easy, they're good people," Dean whispered, introducing him with a pride that warmed Finn's cheeks. There was Rico, the foreman with a mustache like a handlebar and stories of Nam. Lena, Dean's sister, sharp-eyed and quicker with a quip than a knife. And a dozen others, faces weathered by wind and work, who ribbed Dean about finally bringing a keeper around. As the night wore on, beers loosening tongues, Lena pulled Finn aside near the dessert table, her voice low under the hum of conversation. "He's been through hell, you know. Elena didn't just leave. She gutted him. Said he wasn't man enough for the life she wanted. Kids, the whole picket fence dream. Dean. He pretends it's water under the bridge, but it runs deep." Finn nodded, throat tight, glancing at Dean across the room, animated as he arm-wrestled Rico, veins bulging in his forearms. "I see how he looks at you," Lena added, squeezing Finn's arm. "Like you're the anchor he's been missing." Emboldened, Finn cornered Dean later on the deck, the city lights twinkling across the narrows like fallen stars. "What are we doing here, Whitaker? This feels real." Dean's expression softened, the lines around his eyes crinkling as he pulled Finn into his chest, the scent of sage from the stuffing clinging to his shirt. "It is real. Scary as hell, but real." Their kiss was fierce, hands fisting in fabric, the world narrowing to the heat between them. For the first time, Finn let himself imagine a future. Not the escape hatch he'd planned, but a door swinging wide. Yet as they drove back through the rain-swept streets, Dean's phone buzzed incessantly on the dash. He silenced it without looking, but Finn caught the name, Elena. The jealousy from before resurfaced, sharper now, a blade twisting in his gut. "Old flames die hard?" he joked, aiming for light but landing on brittle. Dean's jaw tightened, knuckles white on the wheel. "Some fires you can't fully put out. But you're the one I'm driving home to." It should have soothed, but instead, it echoed hollow, the first whisper of the storm to come. December arrived in Seattle like an uninvited guest, blanketing the city in a hush of frost-laced evergreens and holiday lights strung like veins of gold across the neighborhoods. Finn's loft transformed subtly under Dean's influence. A strings of chili pepper lights from Lena's last visit dangling from the exposed beams, a battered acoustic guitar propped in the corner that Dean strummed on lazy Sundays, filling the air with covers of Jason Isbell tunes that tugged at Finn's heartstrings. Their routines deepened, weaving into the fabric of his days. Morning texts with coffee emojis and inside jokes about the barista who'd shorted Dean's change. Evenings tangled on the couch watching old noir films on TCM. Dean's commentary a gravelly counterpoint to Bogart's cynicism. See that? Guy's running from himself. We all do, till someone makes you stop. Finn's freelance work picked up with the holiday rush, logos for indie bookstores and craft breweries demanding late nights at his drafting table. But Dean was there like clockwork, arriving with takeout from the dim sum spot in the International District or a six-pack of Manny's Pale Ale to coax him away from the screen. World won't end if you unplug for an hour, Dean would say, his hands kneading the knots from Finn's shoulders, thumbs pressing deep until tension melted into sighs. Those massages often led to more, bodies rediscovering each other in the flicker of the desk lamp. Dean's mouth mapping the freckles across Finn's collarbone like constellations he needed to name. But beneath the intimacy, fissures formed. Finn's friends noticed first. Over beers at the Lock and Keel in Ballard, Mia leaned in, her eyes narrowing over the rim of her pint. You're glowing, Harlan, but it's got that feverish edge, like you're waiting for the fever to break. Jax nodded, his inked fingers drumming the table. Dean's solid, man, but I've heard whispers. Guy's got baggage heavier than a logger's truck. Finn brushed it off with a laugh, but the words lodged like splinters. That night, alone in the loft while Dean worked overtime on a storm-damaged roof in Magnolia, Finn scrolled through Dean's sparse social media. Carefully curated shots of sunsets over the Sound. Crew selfies with hard hats and hammers. No trace of Elena or the ring he'd glimpsed. Curiosity morphed into compulsion. He messaged an old hookup from Portland, a guy named Theo who'd crossed paths with Dean's circle. Know anything about Whitaker? The reply came swift. Hot as hell but burned Elena bad. Rumor is he's still tangled up with her family. Some promise he made. The seed of doubt sprouted thorns overnight. The next morning, as snow flurried lightly outside, Seattle's rare white Christmas teas, Dean showed up at Finn's door with a thermos of spiked cider and a wrapped gift. A leather-bound sketchbook, its cover embossed with a raven in mid-flight, pages thick and inviting. For the ideas that keep you up, Dean said, his smile tentative, like he wasn't used to giving pieces of himself. Finn's throat tightened, guilt warring with suspicion as he pulled Dean inside, their coats shedding flakes onto the hardwood. They spent the day building a gingerbread rendition of the Space Needle, laughter bubbling as Dean's icing fingers smeared across Finn's nose, retaliation leading to a chase around the kitchen island that ended pressed against the fridge, mouths hungry and hands urgent. Later, curled under a quilt his mom had sewn from flannel scraps, Dean traced the tattoo on Finn's inner arm. A compass rose pointing eternally north, and asked, "What's the story here? Feels like it's holding something back." Finn hesitated, the vulnerability a chasm. Reminder to find my way home, even if home's just me. Dean's eyes darkened, thumb pressing the needle point. Home's wherever you let someone in, Harlan. Doesn't have to be perfect. He kissed the ink then, slow and reverent. But Finn's mind snagged on let someone in, wondering if Dean had ever truly opened his own doors. The holidays amplified the intimacy, pulling them into each other's orbits with gravitational force. Finn met Dean's extended family at a raucous Christmas Eve gathering in his aunt's sprawling rancher in Shoreline, the air thick with the scent of pozole and pine from a tree strung with mismatched ornaments. Elena's absence hung like a specter. Photos of her still dotted the mantel, her laugh frozen in frames beside Dean's younger self. His uncle Raoul clapped Finn on the back, booming, "Dean's got that look again, eh? The one that says he's found his harbor." But Lena's warning glance over eggnog spoke volumes. Don't push too hard. Finn's mom, visiting from her new place in Tacoma, took to Dean immediately during their quiet New Year's brunch at a cafe overlooking the locks. "He's got roots, that one?" she said later, squeezing Finn's hand as they watched salmon leap upstream through the fish ladder. "Like those old cedars." bent by storms but standing tall. Finn wanted to believe it, but the ring haunted him, a phantom weight. On New Year's Eve, they joined the revelry in Pioneer Square, the crowd a sea of confetti and cheers as midnight struck. Dean pulled Finn into a shadowed alcove off First Avenue, fireworks blooming overhead like shattered emeralds. "To us," he toasted with a stolen champagne flute, his free hand slipping a chain around Finn's neck, a silver pendant shaped like an anchor, cool against his skin. Whatever that means. The kiss that followed blurred the line between celebration and desperation, Dean's body pinning Finn's to the brick with a possessiveness that stole his breath. "I love you," Dean whispered against his lips, the words slipping out like a confession too long held. Finn froze, the L word a thunderclap in the chaos, joy and terror colliding. "Yeah," he managed, voice rough. "Me too." It was true, terrifyingly so, the bet forgotten, the proofs irrelevant. But as they stumbled back to the car, Dean's phone lit up again. "Elena." This time, he answered, stepping away into the shadows. His voice a murmur lost to the din. Finn pretended not to notice, but the anchor around his neck suddenly felt like ballast, dragging him under. January brought the gray deluge Seattle was infamous for, days bleeding into nights under skies the color of slate. Their connection deepened in the confinement, stolen weekends at a cabin Dean's crew had access to up in the Olympics, where snow muffled the world and the only sounds were the crackle of the fireplace and their shared breaths. There, wrapped in wool blankets on a bearskin rug. "Foe," Dean assured with a wink. They bared more than skin. Dean spoke of his father's death in a mill accident when he was 16, the way it carved him hollow, leaving him to raise Elena's dreams alongside his own. "I promised her family I'd always look out for her," he admitted one night, stars pricking the velvet sky through the skylight. "Even after the divorce. It's why I send money up to her folks in Yakima. Old debts don't die easy." Finn listened, heart aching for the boy Dean had been, but the pieces didn't fit cleanly. "And the ring?" he asked, the question escaping before he could cage it. Dean stiffened, then sighed, rolling to face him, firelight gilding his profile. "Keepsake. Nothing more." The lie hung between them, unspoken but palpable, and Finn let it slide, pulling Dean closer instead, their bodies a temporary truce. Sex became their language for the unsaid, fierce and tender by turns. Dean's hands worshipping Finn's curves and angles as if mapping a beloved shore, whispers of mine and stay gasped into sweat-damp sheets. Yet the cracks widened. Mia cornered him at work, her coffee shop apron dusted with flour as she fixed him with a stare. "You're in deep, Finn, but Dean's like him. They plan escapes before they even arrive." Jax echoed it over ink sessions, needle buzzing as he outlined a new wave on Finn's calf. Heard from Rico, Dean's been cagey about the future, talking weddings with the crew, but not naming names. Paranoia festered, Finn checking Dean's phone when he showered, finding texts from Elena. "Need to talk. Soon." Guilt gnawed at him. He'd started this as a lark, a proof of immunity, and now he was the one fracturing. Valentine's Day loomed, a gauntlet Finn dreaded. Dean surprised him with reservations at Canlis, the iconic perch overlooking the lake, where candlelight danced on crystal and the city sprawled below like a jeweled promise. Dressed in slacks that hugged his thighs and a button-down the color of storm clouds, Finn met Dean's gaze across the linen-draped table, the pendant warm against his chest. To proving the impossible, Dean toasted, clinking glasses, his eyes holding a secret shimmer. Dessert arrived, a molten chocolate cake they shared, spoons clinking like conspirators, and as the bill came, Dean slipped a small box across the table. Finn's breath hitched, the earlier ring flashing in his mind. Inside was a key, simple and silver, attached to a tag engraved cabin. "For when you need to get away," Dean said, voice thick. "With me." Relief flooded Finn, sweet as the wine, and he lunged across the table for a kiss that drew indulgent smiles from the waitstaff. Back home, they made love with a reverence that bordered on prayer, Dean's body a vow against Finn's skin. But in the afterglow, as Dean slept, Finn's phone buzzed. A photo from Theo, time-stamped that afternoon. Dean at a jeweler's in Bellevue, examining bands, Elena's name on the receipt stub visible in the background blur. Betrayal bloomed cold and absolute. Finn dressed quietly, slipping out into the rain, the city a blur of neon and regret. He walked the waterfront until dawn, the ferries ghosting across the dark water like ships of the damned, questioning every touch, every word. Was it all a game to Dean too? Proof of something Finn couldn't name? By morning, he'd convinced himself to confront it, to end it before the shatter. But when he returned, Dean was waiting, coffee brewing, eyes red-rimmed. "Where'd you go?" Not accusation, but ache. Finn's resolve cracked. Nowhere, just needed air. They fell back into rhythm, the photo buried in his deleted folder. But the poison seeped deeper, tainting the spring thaw that followed. As cherry blossoms tentatively budded along the Burke-Gilman Trail, their runs turned tense, silences stretching like shadows. Dean sensed it, filling the voids with plans. A road trip to the Lavender Farms in Sequim, tickets to a Fleet Foxes show at the Paramount. "Let's make memories that stick," he'd say. But Finn's smiles felt borrowed. The bet that started it all echoed mockingly. Mia claiming her 20 over drinks, oblivious to the wreckage. Finn paid up, the cash crisp as the lie he'd lived. But inside, he was unraveling, thread by thread. One evening in late March, as they picnicked on Alki Beach, the Olympics a hazy purple smudge across the Sound, Dean turned to him with that crooked smile. "Marry me, Harlan?" The words hung, playful but edged with something raw. Finn's laugh choked. "What?" Dean shrugged, tossing a pebble into the waves. "Hypothetical, but wouldn't be the worst idea." Finn's heart seized, the ring, the texts, the whispers converging. "Yeah," he lied. "Wouldn't be." But as the sun dipped, painting the sky in bruised colors, Finn knew the hypothetical was a bomb, ticking down to detonation. April's tentative warmth coaxed Seattle from its chrysalis, tulips rioting in riotous color along the arboretum paths. But Finn Harlan moved through the season like a man half asleep, his world tilting on an axis he could no longer trust. The proposal, casual as it had been, tossed like a skipping stone across the bay, lodged in his chest, a barbed hook pulling at doubts he tried to drown. Dean seemed oblivious, his energy undimmed as he threw himself into spring projects. Restoring a gazebo in Discovery Park with his crew, the scent of fresh sawn cedar following him home like a signature. "Come help tomorrow," he'd urge, kissing Finn's temple as they collapsed into bed, bodies aligning in the familiar dance that still sparked fire despite the chill between them. Finn went, hammer in hand, the rhythm of nails driven home a temporary salve, but his gaze lingered on Dean's profile, strong jaw set in concentration, sweat beading on his brow, searching for the lie hidden in the lines. Nights blurred into confessions unspoken. Finn lay awake, Dean's arm heavy across his waist, listening to the distant wail of a fairy horn slicing the fog. Memories surfaced unbidden. That first kiss in the market, tasting of jam and hope. The way Dean had held him through a panic attack after a nightmare about his dad, murmuring, "I've got you," until the world steadied. How could something so visceral be fabrication? Yet the evidence mounted, insidious as ivy creeping a fence. Another text glimpsed in passing, "Rings ready. Meet Friday." Sent Finn spiraling into solitary runs along the locks, pounding pavement until his lungs burned, the leaping salmon mocking his stasis. Mia clocked the change during their weekly catch-up at her cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine underscoring her concern. "You're fading, Finn, like a photo left in the sun too long." She slid him a court-a-deux, extra foam, her hand lingering on his. "Talk to me. Is it the L word? Or something worse?" He deflected with a shrug, but the dam cracked over their second round. "He's planning something. With her." The words tasted like ash, the photo from Theo resurfacing in his mind. Mia's eyes widened, then narrowed in fury. "Confront the bastard. Don't let him string you along like yesterday's catch." Jack's, looped in via group chat later, was blunter. Ghost him. Protect your heart, man. But ghosting Dean felt like amputating a limb. Instead, Finn buried himself in work. Deadlines for a startup's rebrand consuming his nights, sketches of minimalist logos that echoed the emptiness gnawing inside. Dean noticed, of course, his perceptiveness a double-edged blade. One rainy Tuesday, he showed up at the loft unannounced, drenched from the downpour, a pizza box from Pagliacci's steaming in his arms. "Intervention," he declared, kicking the door shut, water pooling at his feet. They ate cross-legged on the floor, the pepperoni's spice cutting the tension, and Dean's knee nudged Finn's deliberately. "You've been a million miles away. Spill it, Harlan. We're in this, remember?" The anchor pendant felt like a noose as Finn met his gaze. "Just work, and feels like we're speeding toward something, but I'm not sure what." Dean set his slice down, wiping his hands on his jeans, expression turning grave. "The hypothetical is not just talk. I've been thinking, really thinking about forever. With you." His hand covered Finn's, thumb stroking the pulse point. "Scared the hell out of me at first. After Elena, I swore off the white picket trap. But you make me want to build something solid. Rings, vows, the works." Finn's stomach plummeted, joy and terror in freefall. "Dean, But the words stuck, the secret knowledge a poison pill. Dean leaned in, sealing the moment with a kiss that tasted of olives and optimism, pulling Finn onto the rug where clothes shed like inhibitions. Their lovemaking was deliberate. Dean's eyes locked on his, bodies moving in a cadence that whispered, "Trust me." Afterward, sated and spent, Dean murmured into Finn's hair, "Let's do this right. Dinner with my folks next weekend. Make it official." Finn nodded against his chest, the lie a weight crushing his ribs. The family dinner in Shoreline was a study in contrasts. Aunt Maria's hacienda-style home alive with the sizzle of carnitas in the kitchen, laughter spilling from the dining room where card games devolved into good-natured chaos. Dean's parents, salty-haired Tomas, a retired welder with hands like weathered oak, and Sophia, whose smile lines mapped a lifetime of quiet strength, embraced Finn like a long-lost son, passing plates of empanadas and stories of Dean's boyhood scrapes. "Always the fixer, our boy," Tomas chuckled, clapping Dean's shoulder. "Broke more bones than hearts back then." Sophia's eyes twinkled as she refilled Finn's wine. "But he's mended plenty since. Elena was a chapter. You're the story he wants to write now." Under the table, Dean's fingers intertwined with Finn's, a silent anchor. But across the room, Lena caught his eye, her expression a mix of warning and wistfulness. Later, as they cleared plates, she cornered him by the sink. "He's all in, Finn. But Elena's been calling. Family stuff, her dad's sick, and Dean's the rock they lean on. Don't let it twist you up." Finn nodded, suds bubbling over his hands, but the reassurance rang false. Driving home through the misty streets, Dean hummed along to the radio, a Lucinda Williams ballad about reckless love, his free hand on Finn's thigh. "They like you. A lot." Finn forced a smile. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The vow tasted bittersweet, the confrontation he'd rehearsed in his head dissolving like mist. Spring deepened, the city exhaling into bloom. They escaped to the cabin for a weekend, the Olympics peaks dusted with lingering snow, wildflowers nodding along the trail to Solduc Falls. Hiking hand in hand, packs light with sandwiches and secrets, Dean paused at a overlook, the river roaring below like pent-up emotion. "Remember our first fight?" he asked, pulling Finn back against his chest, chin resting on his shoulder. There hadn't been one. Not really, just spats over forgotten chores or late nights, but Finn played along. Vaguely. "Something about you hogging the blankets." Dean's laugh rumbled through him. "Point is, we weather it. Like this place. Storms come, but the roots hold." That night, by the fire, Dean produced a bottle of mezcal from his pack, the smoke-tinged spirit loosening tongues. "Truth or dare?" he proposed, eyes glinting in the flames. Finn chose truth, and Dean's question lanced deep. What's your biggest fear about us? Finn's mouth went dry, the ring's ghost rising. That it'll end like the story's worn. Beautiful start, brutal fade. Dean's face fell, but he pulled Finn closer, their knees knocking. Not ours. I promise. His turn dare. Finn hesitated, then whispered, Plan the wedding. For real. Show me you're serious. Dean's breath hitched, but he nodded, pulling out his phone to jot notes. Venue on the beach at Golden Gardens. Tacos from the food truck in Magnolia. Vows under the madrona trees. Finn watched, heart fracturing, the fantasy a cruel mirror to the truth he suspected. Back in the city, the planning bled into reality. Dean texted links to photographers, quizzed Finn on cake flavors over breakfast, chocolate stout or lavender honey. Finn played the part, suggestions flowing, but inside, turmoil churned. He confided in his mom during a visit to Tacoma. The Puget Sound a steel-gray expanse from her balcony. Sounds like love, Mijo, she said, using the endearment Dean had slipped into their lexicon. But love asks questions. Ask yours. Emboldened, Finn waited for Dean's next shower, rifling his wallet. The photo of Elena was gone, replaced by one of them at the market. Finn laughing, arm around Dean's waist. Relief warred with shame, but then his fingers brushed paper. A receipt from the jeweler, dated last week, for a custom band engraved always, D. The world tilted. Finn pocketed it, fleeing to the balcony. Rain sheeting the glass as sobs racked him, silent, wrenching. Dean emerged, towel around his hips, concern etching his features. Finn? What's wrong? Finn thrust the receipt forward, voice breaking. This, her, tell me I'm wrong. Dean's face drained of color, the towel slipping forgotten as he snatched the paper, crumpling it. It's not, God, Harlan, listen. But Finn was already backing away, the anchor pendant yanking taut. I started this to prove I wasn't your type. Now you're proving it for me. The argument erupted like a squall, words lashing. Dean insisting it was for his father's replacement ring, a family heirloom Elena had taken. Finn hurling accusations of divided loyalties, the texts, the whispers. You're planning a life with her ghost. Dean's voice cracked. No, damn it, it's you. Always you. But Finn stormed out, the door slamming like finality, pounding the streets until exhaustion claimed him on a bench in Cary Park, the skyline mocking his solitude. Days passed in radio silence, Finn crashing at Jax's tattoo parlor couch, sketches turning dark and abstract, ravens devouring their own wings. Mia dragged him to therapy, a queer-friendly spot in Capitol Hill where the counselor, a soft-spoken woman named Riley with purple-streaked hair, unpacked the bet's origins. You proved your point, Finn. Now what do you want? He didn't know, but the ache clarified one truth, Dean. On the sixth day, a knock echoed through Jax's door. Dean stood there, rain-soaked and hollow-eyed, holding a manila envelope. Read this, then decide. Inside, divorce papers, finalized years ago. Emails to Elena cutting ties with her family, dated the day after Valentine's. The ring receipt, annotated, for Dad's band, repair only. And a letter, Dean's scrawl unsteady. I planned the wedding for us. The jeweler mix-up was fate's cruel joke. Forgive me for not seeing your hurt sooner. I love you. Fight for this with me? Finn's walls crumbled, tears blurring the ink. He called Dean, voice raw. Come get me. They met at the Rusty Anchor, the same alley where it began, Dean's arms enveloping him as thunder rumbled distant. I'm sorry, they chorused, laughter breaking through. But the storm had reshaped them, trust fragile as new growth. May unfurled in Seattle with a vengeance, azaleas exploding in defiant pinks along the boulevards, the air humming with the buzz of life reclaiming the gray. Finn and Dean navigated the aftermath like tightrope walkers, each step tentative, the envelope's revelations a fragile bridge over the chasm they'd nearly tumbled into. Morning started with coffee shared on Finn's balcony, mugs steaming as they dissected the wreckage. Dean's oversight in not sharing the family burden sooner, Finn's paranoia fueled by the bet's lingering poison. I should have burned that damn photo, Dean muttered one dawn, his fingers interlacing with Finn's over the railing, the sound a distant murmur below. Finn squeezed back. And I should have trusted the man in front of me, not the shadows. Apologies wove into vows unspoken, their touches lingering longer, as if reaffirming boundaries redrawn. Work pulled Finn deeper into the grind, a major contract for a nonprofit in Belltown demanding mood boards of urban renewal, ironic given his own reconstruction. Dean supported from the sidelines, showing up with lunch from the food trucks on Western Avenue, his crew's banter filtering through as he lingered, broad frame blocking the spring sun. Fuel for the artist, he'd say, pressing a kiss to Finn's temple before vanishing back to a site in South Lake Union, where skyscrapers clawed toward the clouds. Evenings blurred into healing rituals. Long baths in Dean's clawfoot tub, scented with eucalyptus from the Pike Place herbalist, bodies soaking side by side, knees knocking in the porcelain confines. Dean would wash Finn's hair, fingers massaging scalp with a tenderness that unraveled knots deeper than muscle, whispers of poetry. Pablo Neruda lines about loving fiercely despite the thorns, floating on the steam. But reconciliation's glow-masked undercurrents. Elena reached out directly one afternoon, her email pinging Finn's inbox while he sketched at his table. Heard you're the one. Take care of him, he's too stubborn to ask for it. Attached was a photo of the repaired ring, gleaming on a velvet cushion, captioned peace offering. Finn forwarded it to Dean, who responded with a call from the job site, voice tight over the whine of saws. Delete it. She's out of our story now. Yet the intrusion lingered, a reminder that pasts didn't evaporate like morning mist. Finn's therapy sessions with Riley delved deeper, unpacking the bet's roots in his father's abandonment. The fear that love was a transaction waiting to default. You're not proving anything anymore, she said, her office a sunlit haven of plants and affirmations. You're living it. Own that. The crew's potluck in June marked a milestone. The rented pavilion in Discovery Park fragrant with grilled corn and chorizo, laughter echoing off the trees like birdsong. Dean's arm stayed firm around Finn's waist as introductions circled, Rico toasting to the grooms-to-be, with a wink that drew cheers. Lena pulling Finn into a hug that smelled of jasmine perfume. You two glow like fireflies, she murmured. Over plates piled high, stories flowed. Tomas recounting Dean's first crush, a neighbor boy with freckles and a slingshot. Sophia sharing her own late-blooming romance after widowhood. Finn felt the family's embrace like sunlight, warming fractures he'd hidden. Later, as dusk painted the sky indigo, Dean drew him to the water's edge, pebbles shifting underfoot. This is what I want, he said, gesturing to the gathering. Us, rooted here, emboldened. They dove into wedding plans in earnest, the hypothetical solidifying into spreadsheets and dreams. Venue scouting led them to a cliffside estate in West Seattle, overlooking the sound where fairies ghosted like wedding guests. Imagine vows here, Dean breathed, wind tousling his hair as they toured the gardens, roses climbing trellises in crimson cascades. Finn envisioned it, arches of driftwood and wildflowers, the crash of waves underscoring promises. Cake tastings at a bakery in Georgetown followed, buttercream and lemon zest smearing their fingers as they fed each other bites, laughter bubbling like champagne. Dean favored the salted caramel, bitter and sweet, like life, while Finn pushed for berry compote, tart and bright. Yet joy's underbelly stirred. Mia, ever the skeptic, cornered Finn at her cafe during a rare solo visit, the espresso grinder whirring like accusation. It's idyllic, but real love's got teeth. You sure he's not still tangled? Finn bristled, but doubt flickered. Overhearing Dean on a call to Yakima, voice low. No, Ma, it's done. Finn's my future. Reassurance or closure? Jax, inking a fresh piece on Finn's shoulder. A phoenix rising from raven feathers. Probe gentler. Wedding's a leap. You jumping with both eyes open. Finn nodded, but the ink's sting echoed the pinch in his gut. Midsummer heat wave baked the city, asphalt shimmering, driving them to the cabin for refuge. The drive wound through Olympic rainforest, ferns arching overhead like cathedral vaults, the air thick with pine and earth. They arrived sweat-slicked, shedding clothes on the porch, bodies cooling in the stream that burbled nearby. Splashing turned to grappling, water sheeting their skin as Dean pinned Finn against mossy rock, mouths fusing in a kiss that tasted of minerals and madness. "Marry me," Dean gasped, not hypothetical now, the words a plea against Finn's throat. "Yes," Finn whispered, the anchor pendant glinting in the dappled light, binding them. Back home, invitations took shape, hand-lettered cards on recycled paper, seals of wax stamped with intertwined initials. Dean's enthusiasm was infectious, him poring over playlists for the reception. A mix of mariachi horns and indie folk, to honor roots entwined. But one evening, as they pored over guest lists in Dean's bungalow, the envelope arrived. Unmarked, slid under the door. Finn opened it, heart stuttering. Photos of Dean and Elena, recent, her hand on his arm at a Yakima diner, smiles too intimate. A note in block letters, "He's playing you both. Run." Panic clawed Finn's throat, visions of betrayal cascading. He confronted Dean in the kitchen, photos scattering like confetti from hell. "What the fuck is this?" Dean's face ashen, he snatched one, crumpling it. "Staged. Her brother's doing bitter about the money cutoff. I went to tell her folks in person, end it clean. Nothing more." Proof followed, timestamps, texts to Rico about the trip. Finn collapsed against the counter, sobs racking. "I can't keep fighting ghosts." Dean knelt, gathering him close. "Then let's exorcise them. Together." The incident forged steel in their resolve. Therapy joint now. Riley mediating as they aired fears. Finn's abandonment scars. Dean's guilt over Elena's unraveling life. "Love isn't erasure," she counseled. "It's addition." They emerged stronger, plans accelerating. Suits tailored in the U District, rings selected. A pair of hammered tungsten, inlaid with Puget blue agate. Finn's mom hosted a shower in Tacoma. The balcony strung with lanterns, gifts of linens and kitchenware piling high. "To new beginnings," she toasted, eyes misty. As August waned, rehearsals loomed, but a shadow fell. Dean's cough, persistent, dismissed as allergies to the ragweed bloom. Finn noticed the fatigue etching Dean's features, the way he'd pause mid-sentence, hand pressing his side. "Doctor," Finn urged one night, tracing the lines under Dean's eyes. "Just a checkup." The appointment yielded a shadow on the scan. Early, treatable, but the word cancer landed like a rogue wave, appending their horizon. Devastation hit in waves. Dean downplayed it over dinner at their cliffside venue, the sound glittering below. "It's stage 1, Harlan. Chemo surgery. I'll be dancing at the reception." But Finn saw the fear in his clenched jaw, the way his hand trembled on the wineglass. "We postpone." Dean shook his head fierce. "Hell no. This is our fight song." Planning shifted, resilience woven in, playlists adding anthems of survival. Finn held Dean through nights of nausea from preemptive meds, whispering stories of his mom's remission, hands steady where Dean's faltered. September's equinox brought clarity, the city exhaling summer's heat into autumn's crisp edge. They stood on the venue's overlook, rings exchanged in a private vow renewal, officiant a friend from the crew. In sickness, in health, Dean echoed, voice gravel rough, but eyes alight. Finn kissed him, salt mingling with sea air. The real wedding was weeks away, but this was their pact, unbreakable. Yet as leaves turned, Elena appeared. Uninvited at the bungalow door, gaunt and eyes hollow. "I didn't send those photos," she said, voice brittle. "But I needed to see him. One last time." Dean let her in, Finn hovering, tension thick as fog. Over tea, truth spilled. Her relapse into old patterns, the brother's manipulation, a plea for closure. "I release you," she whispered, hugging Dean goodbye, then turning to Finn. "He's yours. Cherish the stubborn fool." The door closed, and Dean sagged against Finn, tears silent. It's over. All of it. Healing bloom tentative but real. Invitations mailed, RSVPs flooding in, family, crew, friends a tapestry of support. Finn's sketches turned celebratory, mood boards of garlands and glow. But the diagnosis loomed, a quiet antagonist. Dean's energy ebbing as treatments loomed. "Promise me," he said one night, body curled around Finn's in the dark. "We do this, no matter what." Finn nodded into the pillow. No matter what. October's chill whispered warnings. Pumpkins grinning from porches. But their fire burned steady. Rehearsal dinner at Aunt Maria's. Toasts raising glasses to resilience. Finn caught Dean's gaze across the table. Love a anchor in the swell. The wedding dawn neared. Promise of forever shadowed but shining. October's veil descended on Seattle with a hush of amber leaves swirling through the streets like confetti from a bittersweet parade. The air crisp with the promise of change. Finn Harlan woke before dawn in Dean's bungalow, the first light filtering through lace curtains his mom had hung years ago for Elena. Now a relic repurposed, soft against the hardwood. Dean slept beside him, chest rising steady despite the faint wheeze that had become their unwelcome companion. The phoenix tattoo on his shoulder, a defiant blaze in the gray. Finn traced it lightly, memorizing the curve of ink against skin. The way Dean's body had become both home and battlefield. The wedding was 3 days away, invitations etched in copperplate elegance already yielding a flood of affirmatives. But the scan results from yesterday hung heavy. The mass had shrunk under chemo's assault, but surgery loomed post-honeymoon, a scalpel's promise of more scars. Dean stirred, eyes fluttering open, obsidian depths softened by morning. Staring again? Flatterer. His voice was rough, laced with the fatigue that clung like dew. But he pulled Finn close, lips brushing temple in a ritual that grounded them. Breakfast was ritual too. Oatmeal spiked with cinnamon from Sophia's spice tin. Eaten at the scarred oak table where Dean had carved their initials one impulsive night. FH plus DW entwined like lovers' fingers. Taste test for the reception, Dean quipped, but Finn saw the effort, the way he pushed the bowl away half-finished. "You're beautiful," Finn murmured, unprompted, and Dean's laugh cracked open the room. "Save it for the vows, poet." The day unfolded in a whirlwind of last preparations. The cliffside estate in West Seattle transformed under florists' hands. Arbors draped in ivy and dahlias, the color of bruised sunsets, paths lined with lanterns that would flicker like fireflies at dusk. Finn and Dean arrived mid-morning, trucks idling with crates of driftwood chairs and linen-draped tables, the sound below a restless murmur. Rico directed traffic with his usual bluster, mustache twitching as he clapped Dean's back. "Looking sharp, boss. Doc says you're clear for cake cutting." Dean nodded, but his grip on Finn's hand tightened, knuckles paling. Inside the main hall, with its vaulted ceilings echoing the gables of old shipwrights, the coordinator, a brisk woman named Tessa with a clipboard like a shield, ran them through the timeline. Processional to acoustic guitar, vows under the madrona tree, first dance to a stripped-down ho-hey that Dean insisted captured their unlikely harmony. Lena arrived with armfuls of favors, tiny jars of wildflower honey from Sequim Farms, tags reading sweet beginnings in Finn's looping script. "Don't cry on me now," she teased, dabbing Finn's eyes with a napkin, but her own glistened. "He's lucky. We all are." Lunch followed in the garden, catered bites of Dungeness crab and heirloom tomatoes, the crew mingling with Finn's side. Mia in a sundress that swirled like autumn leaves, Jack sketching caricatures on napkins, Finn's mom beaming from a wicker chair, her scarf a soft cashmere against the breeze. Toasts bubbled early. Tomas raising a glass of Zinfandel, voice gravelly. "To roots that weather storms. Dean, you found your match in this one. Fire to your steady burn." Sophia added, eyes on Finn, and hard enough for both. But under the levity, tension simmered. Dean slipped away mid-meal, hand pressing his side, face paling as he ducked into the restroom. Finn followed, finding him braced against the sink, breaths shallow. "Just a twinge," Dean gasped, but sweat beaded his brow. Finn fetched water, holding the glass steady, his free hand rubbing circles on Dean's back. "We call it." The question hung, fragile. Dean straightened, jaw set.
"No."
"This is our day. The rest. Tomorrow's fight." They emerged arm in arm, Finn's smile a mask for the crew. But Mia's gaze pierced, her later whisper urgent. "He's pushing too hard. Talk sense into him." Afternoon brought suits. Tailored wool in midnight navy for Dean, charcoal with subtle pinstripes for Finn, vests embroidered with ravens and anchors at the cuffs, a Jack's original. Fittings in a rented space downtown, mirrors reflecting versions of themselves polished and poised. But Dean's reflection wavered when he coughed, a dry hack that echoed off the walls. The tailor pretended not to notice, pinning hems with murmured approvals. But Finn's hands trembled as he knotted Dean's tie, the silk a noose of normalcy. "You clean up lethal," Finn said, voice thick, and Dean cupped his face, thumbs sweeping cheekbones. "Only for you. Always." Evening fell with a rehearsal dinner at Aunt Maria's, the rancher and shoreline aglow with paper lanterns strung across the patio, the scent of adobo chicken and fresh tortillas wafting from the kitchen. Guests arrived in waves, 50 strong. A tapestry of lives intersected. Dean's logging buddies from up north, boisterous with tales of near misses. Finn's design clients, urbane in linen, toasting indie dreams. The head table overlooked the yard, where a fire pit crackled, casting shadows that danced like unspoken fears. Dinner unfolded in courses. Soaps crisp with carnitas, salads of arugula and goat cheese, wines from the Yakima Valley that Sophia had selected. To honor the soil we spring from. Toasts followed, the air electric. Rico first, booming. "Dean, you swung that hammer like a man possessed. But love? That's your masterpiece." Laughter rippled, glasses clinking. Mia rose next, her pixie cut catching the light. Finn's always been the quiet storm, intense, unyielding. "Dean, you saw through to the heart. Don't ever let it go." Finn's mom spoke last, voice steady despite tears. "My boy learned early that home isn't a place. It's the hands that hold you through the dark. Dean, those hands are yours now." Dean's turn came, him standing slow, hand on Finn's shoulder. "I came to Seattle chasing work, found a life. But Finn, he showed me love's not a contract. It's a choice, every damn day. To choosing you." The words landed like grace, but as plates cleared, Elena appeared at the gate. Uninvited, ethereal in a simple shift, eyes shadowed by recent losses. Gasps rippled. Lena moved to intercept, but Dean waved her off, rising with quiet authority. 5 minutes, he said, leading her to the garden's edge, their silhouettes framed by firelight. Finn watched from afar, heart of ice, Mia's hand on his arm a lifeline. Whispers carried, her apology raw and ragged. "I was lost, dragged you down, but seeing you whole, it frees me." Dean nodded, then hugged her brief, a closure etched in the lines of his back. She left without glancing back, the gate latching soft as a sigh. The night deepened into revelry. Dancing on the patio to a playlist of Lumineers and Los Lobos, bodies swaying under stars pricked sharp. Finn pulled Dean close for their first dance, the fire's warmth at their backs, the world narrowing to heartbeat and breath. "No ghosts tonight," Dean murmured, forehead to Finn's. "Just us." But as the song faded, Dean swayed, grip loosening, and Finn caught him, easing him to a chair. "Enough," Finn whispered, signaling Tomas for the car. The drive home was silent, Dean's head on Finn's shoulder, the city lights streaking like tears. Dawn of the wedding day broke clear, a miracle of azure sky over the sound, gulls wheeling as if in benediction. Finn dressed in the estate's bridal suite, a nod to tradition repurposed, Jax adjusting his cufflinks, Mia fussing with boutonnieres of eucalyptus and rose. "You look like fate," Jax said, his grin wolfish. Finn's reflection stared back. Hazel eyes bright with nerves and nerve, the phoenix on his shoulder peeking from his collar, a talisman. Across the hall, Dean prepped with the crew, laughter filtering through. Rico's jokes, Tomas's gruff advice, Breathe, son. She's yours. The ceremony commenced at 4. Guests seated on driftwood benches. The madrona tree an ancient witness, its bark peeling like old vows shed. Acoustic guitar strummed The Night We Met. Mia processing with the rings on a velvet pillow. Lena scattering petals that caught the breeze like whispers. Finn waited at the arch, heart thundering, until Dean appeared. Navy suit hugging his frame. Boutonniere a single agate against his lapel. Eyes locking on Finn's with a hunger that spanned eternities. Vows exchanged under the tree. Words handwritten on cards that trembled in their hands. Dean first. Finn, you crashed into my type like a rogue wave. Unplanned. Unstoppable. I promise to weather your storms. To build with you through the breaks. In your light, I find my north. Finn's voice cracked. Dean, I came to prove a point. Ended up proving my heart. You're my anchor in the swell. My fire in the fog. I choose you, every tide. Rings slid on. Tungsten warm from pockets. Sealing with a kiss that drew cheers, salt and sea on their lips. The reception unfolded in golden hour, tables laden with family recipes. Tamales from Sophia, Finn's mom's pecan pie, crab cakes from the market. Toasts flowed freer now, wine loosening tongues. Jax's body ode to ink and grit. Rico's tearful brothers in arms and hearts. The first dance swirled on the lawn. Ho-hey, acoustic and intimate. Bodies close against the cooling air. Cake cutting followed. Caramel layers yielding under knives. Laughter as frosting smeared noses. But midway through, Dean faltered. Mid-conversation with Tomas, face draining as he clutched the table. Finn was there in an instant, arm around waist. Time, he said, voice brooking no argument. Guests hushed, concern rippling, but Mia orchestrated distractions. More music, open bar. In the suite, Dean retched into a basin. Finn holding hair back, cool cloth to brow. I'm fine, Dean insisted, but his eyes pleaded. Ruining. Finn silenced him with a kiss. Making it ours. That's all. They emerged for the send-off, sparklers waving in a corridor of light, guests chanting names. The car waited, a vintage Mustang from Jax's garage, ribboned and ready for the honeymoon cabin. As they drove into twilight, Dean's head lolled on Finn's shoulder. Worth it, he mumbled. Finn nodded, hand on thigh. Every second. But miles in, Dean's breath hitched sharp, hand convulsing on Finn's. Hospital, he gasped. Finn wheeled the car toward Swedish, tires screaming, sirens wailing in his mind. ER lights harsh, doctors swarming, perforation from the mass, emergency surgery stat. Finn waited in sterile hall, anchor pendant clutched, hours stretching eternal. Dawn broke again as Dean emerged, groggy under fluorescence, incision fresh. Rushed our exit, he joked weak.
Finn wept, kissing Knatzklash.
New beginning, right here. The wedding's afterglow tempered by reality, but love, fierce, unyielding, held. Discharges, recoveries at home, treatments resuming. Their honeymoon deferred to hospital beds and home care, but vows echoed. Choice, every day. Elena sent flowers, a card. Strength to you both. Crew rallied, meals rotating, Mia crashing couches for late-night vigils. November's rains returned, but inside the bungalow warmth bloomed. Finn sketching by Dean's bedside, stories read aloud from Patchett's pages. We made it, Dean whispered one night, color returning to cheeks. Finn smiled, curling close. We're making it. Winter's grip tightened on Seattle as December whispered in. The city cloaked in a mantle of frost-kissed evergreens and streets slick with the first tentative snows that never quite stuck. Finn Harlan moved through the days with a quiet ferocity. His world contracted to the bungalow's hearth, where the wood stove crackled defiance against the chill, casting flickering shadows on walls that now bore framed photos of their cliffside vows. Dean's crooked smile mid-kiss, Finn's eyes crinkled in unguarded joy, the madrona tree a sentinel in the background. Surgery's aftermath lingered like a low fog, scars pink and puckered across Dean's abdomen. energy returning in fits and starts, chemo sessions punctuating weeks like unwelcome full stops. Yet in the interstices, life asserted itself. Mornings with sunlight slanting through frost-laced windows, Dean propped on pillows sketching crude blueprints for a post-recovery project. A community greenhouse in Ballard. Roots for everyone, he'd say, pencil scratching paper with renewed vigor. Finn's freelance rhythm adapted, deadlines negotiated around hospital runs and home infusions. His drafting table relocated to the bedroom for proximity. Sketches evolved, urban gardens entwined with coastal motifs. Ravens perched on trellises heavy with tomatoes, symbols of resilience that clients praised as evocative. Mia and Jax formed the vanguard, Mia stocking the fridge with nutrient-dense smoothies disguised as desserts, Jax turning inking sessions into bedside art therapy, needles buzzing patterns of waves and wildflowers onto Dean's calves. Armor for the fight, Jax murmured, and Dean grinned through the sting. Bring it. I've got a wedding ring. What's a little pain? Family wove tighter. Sophia arriving weekly with pozole simmering in a cast-iron pot. Her hands steady as she adjusted 4 lines with a nurse's old precision. Me amor, she'd say to Finn, pressing a rosary into his palm. Strength is an absence of fear. It's walking through with love. Tomas built shelves in the living room for Dean's growing stack of recovery reads, memoirs of survivors. From Suleika Juad's Between Two Kingdoms to David Sedaris's wry essays on fragility. Lena orchestrated the crew's rotations, burly loggers tiptoeing in with toolboxes repurposed for gentle tasks. Fixing the leaky faucet, hanging sheer curtains to diffuse the winter pallor. Elena's olive branch flowered unexpectedly. A care package delivered mid-month, jars of lavender salve from Yakima Fields and a letter in her looping script. I envied what you built. Now I root for it. Borrow my strength if needed. Dean read it aloud one evening, voice steady, then folded it into the vow box they'd started. A cedar chest for mementos, the agate inlay from his ring, a pressed dahlia from the arch, the crumpled rehearsal napkin stained with Elena's tea. Full circle, he said, and Finn nodded, the past no longer specter but soil nourishing. Holidays approached with modified fanfare. Thanksgiving gathered a pared-down circle at the bungalow. Turkey carved small to match appetites, sides from family recipes yielding abundance on the oak table. Toast circled, Rico's booming, to stubborn hearts. Mia's, to the loves that bend but don't break. Dean, appetite whetted by steroids, raised his glass high. To Finn, my proof that types are bullshit. You rewrote mine. Laughter warmed the room, but Finn caught the hitch in Dean's breath, the subtle lean into his side for support. Later, clearing plates, Finn's mom pulled him aside in the kitchen, steam from the sink curling like secrets. He's fighting for tomorrow. You both are. That's the real vow. Christmas dawned white-dusted, a rarity that blanketed the city in hush. They exchanged gifts by the tree, a Fraser fir scavenged from a lot in Fremont. Ornaments a mix of Dean's childhood glass baubles and Finn's hand-painted ravens. Dean unwrapped a leather journal, pages lined for his greenhouse blueprints, Finn's inscription inside, plant what grows. Tears pricked his eyes, rare and raw. Your turn, Finn said, handing over a slim box. Inside, a custom knife, handle of stabilized maple burl, blade etched with their initials, for the garden work ahead. For cutting through the weeds. Dean tested the edge, then pulled Finn into his lap, kiss deepening as snow flurries danced outside. Best gift. You here. Recovery's arc bent upward, scans in January revealing remission's green light, the mass excised clean, margins wide. Dean's cough faded to memory, strength rebuilding in hikes along the Green Lake Loop, boots crunching frozen paths, hands clasped against the wind off the water. Feel that, he'd say, pausing to breathe deep. Air's sweeter now. Finn nodded, the anchor pendant cool against his skin. A talisman traded for hope. Work resumed gradual. Dean overseeing sites from the truck, Finn's contracts blooming into a partnership with the nonprofit. Designs for green spaces that echoed their story. Spaces for gathering, healing, becoming. Spring equinox marked 6 months since the wedding, a private anniversary at the cabin. The drive unfurled in cherry blossoms, petals carpeting the highway like confetti renewed. They arrived to wildflowers rioting along the stream, the air alive with thaw. Dean unpacked a picnic, sandwiches from Pagliacci's, the same as that intervention night, spreading a quilt on the porch. To us, he toasted with sparkling cider, eyes alight. They made love slow in the afternoon light, bodies rediscovering contours softened by ordeal, touches reverent as prayer. Never thought I'd say it, Dean whispered after, fingers tracing Finn's phoenix. But I'm glad for the storm. Showed me the depth of this. Back in the city, plans for the deferred honeymoon coalesced. A road trip down the Oregon coast, cabins booked from Astoria to Bandon, no rush, just miles of shoreline and shared silences. But first, the greenhouse groundbreaking. A sunlit Saturday in Ballard, soil turned under shovels wielded by crew and kin, Mia snapping photos for the local paper. Love's labor, a garden of second chances. Dean spoke brief, voice carrying on the breeze. This isn't just dirt and seeds. It's proof we grow through cracks. Challenges lingered. Checkups etched in calendars. Nights when fatigue pulled Dean early. Finn sketching alone by lamplight. But intimacy deepened, conversations turning philosophical over late dinners. The cruelty of fate, the grace of choice. I dated you to prove a point, Finn admitted one night, rain pattering the roof like applause. Ended up proving my capacity for this us. Dean's smile crooked. And I planned a wedding to claim a future. Got one better than dreamed. Summer bloomed full, lavender fields echoing their early escapes, the city exhaling into festivals and ferry rides. They hosted a vow renewal for the crew. Informal, on the beach at Golden Gardens, bonfire crackling as waves lapped promises. Elena attended, distant but present, her toast quiet, to freedoms earned. Finn watched Dean laugh, head thrown back, the silver at his temples catching firelight, and knew. This was the man who'd rewritten his type, his heart, his horizon. As August waned, they set out on the honeymoon proper, Mustang packed with coolers and playlists, the coast unspooling in cliffs and coves, stops blurred, Cannon Beach at dawn, Haystack Rock a monolith in the mist, tide pools and yachets, stars hidden in anemone grasp, nights in driftwood cabins, bodies entwined to the ocean's lullaby. Forever's a road, Dean said one evening, toes in sand, not a destination. Finn leaned into him, sunset painting them gold. Then let's drive. Back home, life settled into rhythm. Greenhouse thriving, shoots greening under Dean's watchful eye. Finn's designs gracing billboards, urban oases born of personal fire. Doubts, once tempests, now eddies. Brushed aside with a touch, a glance. The bet that birthed it all? A footnote, chuckled over beers with Mia. Best bad idea ever. In the end, their story wasn't flawless arc. No tidy erasure of pain, but a tapestry of threads. Betrayal mended, cancers confronted, loves chosen daily. It whispered of compassion's quiet power, the freedom in vulnerability, the beauty of identities intertwined. Dean and Finn, anchors to each other, sailed on, through fog and fair winds, proving that types were illusions and hearts, when true, built worlds anew.